Welcome to the COSAFA Show with Mark Gleeson and Nick Said.
Ashford Mamelodi is a leading administrator on the African continent who previously served as Secretary General at the Botswana Football Association and COSAFA. He was also a FIFA Development Officer for many years. He has a book coming out soon called Protecting the Game, where he delves into his 10 years at the BFA and the lessons learned and experience gained from that period of his life. We sat down to discuss his career, starting out with why he decided to write his book.
When I started football, just a little background, I knew very quickly that firstly, I wasn't a star football player who needs to be on the field, but most importantly, I recognized that there's need to manage the game better than what I was witnessing. I was still a young boy. I didn't know what good management meant, but I just knew that there was something wrong with the way the football game is run. So that motivated me to go into sport leadership. So fast forward to my 10 years at the BFA, as Secretary General or General Secretary, I then decided, look, given the experience that I've had over the 10 years, it may be a good idea to share with, first of all, young people and people in leadership, because I think there are certain things that people can pick up. Of course, not everything, but they may see value in certain things.
So is the book specifically around your 10 years at the BFA, or does it cover more of your football journey? So, of course, we know you as previously FIFA Development Officer, amongst several other roles.
No, it's purely an utter. I decided to start from where it all started, from the BFA itself. So it's the 10 years, my 10 years at the BFA. If I included everything else, it would have been 40 years.
Yeah. And what are sort of some of the key learnings that you've come across, I guess, in your many different roles and as you say, your 40 years of experience in football administration?
Well, I think even when I was at the BFA, I really, there's a lot to learn. I learned on the run. And one of the most important things that I fell in love with, even as long ago as that, was good governance. We called it collective responsibility at the time. And I really believe this is a big takeaway, and hence I've shared a little bit of that as well. I mean, the book talks about leadership to a certain extent. When we came into the BFA, there were two critical areas that we changed course on. The first was making sure that football is played almost everywhere in the country. There were certain areas, certain big chunks of land where there was no organized football. Yes, there was social football, but there was no organized football. And then the second big point was development. Prior to our coming in, there was no international games whatsoever. All we celebrated every year on Independence Day was an independence celebration match. So clearly, at our time, we really had to turn things, and it wasn't easy because people loved beating so-called big countries at independence, and now we were spoiling it. And we had been warned that, international competitions, you're going to have to undergo a baptism of fire, and we did in a big way. The Zebras, our national team in Botswana, became the whipping boys of Africa. But development ultimately paid off as far as we were concerned.
And if you look back at those times, how have things changed compared to today? Are we in a better place, do you think?
I think we should be at a much, much better place. I don't think we're at a better place than we were then. I get the impression, maybe I'm wrong because I was directly involved, there was far more commitment that side. Even for those who played football and were very brilliant football players, the issue of money did not really arise. If the guy had enough in his pocket to buy a meal to take him home, that was fine, you know what I mean? So clearly we've moved on and it's very much become a commercial sport. I think this is one area. And not only that, even when you go to the administrators now, the spirit of volunteerism, which we enjoyed a great deal during our time, is quickly waning away, if you like. Everybody, if you give somebody something to do, the question is, what's in it for me? And so for that, of course, because there's so much money in football, I'm worried about the scourge of corruption also, quietly finding its way into the game. And consequently retarding progress.
And you, of course, host our very successful COSAFA administrator workshops. You do that at almost every one of the COSAFA tournaments. Do you see within those workshops a real hunger from younger people to get involved in football administration?
I think there is, and I've seen a lot of talent. Now, unfortunately, what has happened is what I've experienced, not only in South Africa, but everywhere I've been and conducting these courses. You've got young people, very enthusiastic, but you have those in power or those in authority at the time feeling that there is no need for them to come in. And I think there lies the problem, because you find that these younger ones can't break through because at the top of them, there are people perhaps who don't have the appreciation of what it is that they've been learning and the hunger that they've got. There's definitely a lot of hunger. There's a lot of quality as well. But the only dilemma is we are not allowing this to come through, because clearly at the top, we want to stay forever in certain instances. And also, some young, clever kid will come in and take my job. I think it's too many things, but I see that as being one of the biggest problems. Of course, critically, if the leadership was well-informed, very knowledgeable, I think the situation would be different.
And obviously, in football terms, we can look at a striker and say, well, his attributes are his pace and skill on the ball and ability in the air. Do administrators in your realm have sort of the similar attributes that you look for in a person and think, okay, well, this person is suitable for that kind of role?
I think that is correct. I mean, I always talk about the major divide between your operations and politics. While on the one side, the general secretary and his staff and anybody else working for football is more or less on the operation side, whereas you have your big boys, the executive committee, who are the politicians of the game. That's one divide one must appreciate. But then, of course, going forward, you need the leadership to lead. And if we don't have the leadership well informed in terms of leadership, it does tend to create a problem. And we see this pockets of this all over the continent. I mean, in some places, not everywhere, but certainly in some places, you get a feeling that we've reached a grinding halt simply because, direction, we seem to have lost direction. And if the leadership doesn't know to get us back to that course, then we're in a little bit of trouble. I don't know if I'm making sense.
No, you are, absolutely. Absolutely. And Mr. Mamelodi, you were previously a FIFA Development Officer. Can you just explain a little bit, because people might not really understand what that entailed. What were some of the key things that you did around the continent and around Southern Africa?
Well, I was fortunate that I've always liked leadership and training of leadership. So I was an accredited International Olympic Committee instructor in administration, and also both CAF and FIFA administration and management instructor. So that wasn't my key function as a development officer, because clearly the mandate was to manage the gold program which FIFA introduced in the early 2000s, where FIFA was building infrastructure. I mean, before this happened, many associations didn't have their own offices. They didn't have, a technical center where they can develop and, do football development. But fast forward, you put the gold project in place. There's no country, certainly in Africa, and I don't think in Asia either, which doesn't have its own headquarters and its own technical center. Some of them have even more than that. Clearly, that's what I was involved in. But because of my passion for teaching in administration and management, I did a great deal of that. And I even helped at the level of FIFA with, your curricula, etc., and, what content we need to look at, etc. So that gave me a lot of experience, especially moving around. It it was just not Botswana anymore. It was, getting to visit all the other countries, first as a development officer, but importantly as on assignment by FIFA to go and run. We used to have a Futuro 1, it then moved to Futuro 2, and ultimately Futuro 3, which was ready for instructors, development of instructors in the different themes of football, like your doctors, your coaches, your referees. But of course, I belong to the administration side.
And you mentioned earlier there about, being involved in the Olympic movement and whatnot. Does administration change from sport to sport in your view, or is really the basic functions of that role the same? Doesn't matter if it's soccer or rugby or cricket or whatnot.
It definitely does not change. Once you've got the principles right, they apply to all sports. That's a good thing about leadership and sports management. Obviously, when you're in rugby, you've got to understand the rugby regulations and culture, etc. But the basics of running the sport are the same, exactly the same. So clearly, that's the experience I had, and I've had situations where in my classes, people who are from other sports came in and enjoyed themselves and saw the relevance. And other people, when you did certain things for sport, like say, for example, your planning or your marketing strategy or something like that, participants actually felt that this actually helped them in their day-to-day work as well. So that was very useful, for them to see that, wow, so whatever I'm doing at work, I'm supposed to apply the same principles, when I'm working for football or whatever I'm doing for football.
And I guess it's fair to say as well that a healthy administration more than often results in a healthy team on the pitch, whether it be a club side or a national team. Is that good? Sometimes clubs seem to be failing, and is that perhaps because of poor governance rather than a poor coach or poor players on the field?
You've hit the nail on the head. That is exactly the problem. Because of the weakness in the leadership, whether it's at a club level or at, we are then unable to steer the club or the association. I mean, it applies for both, in the correct way. So clearly, it's very important. It doesn't matter how small a club is, that the leadership structure, there must be structures within that little entity, within that little sport, to make sure that it is managed properly. So very often when there are problems, it's like when coaches are being accused, 8 out of 10 is because of poor leadership. It's not the coach. He's not provided with the tools to succeed. And who provides the tools is the leadership. So I see this as quite interesting. I see it quite often that, the leaders will always find the scapegoats. Either the referee was biased, either the coach was biased. But more often than not, it's actually the leadership that did not know where to go.
And then if we can just rewind a little bit, Mr. Mamelodi, you touched on earlier about how you got into administration, but what for you was the driving force? What was it that appealed to this position? I know you said you enjoy leadership and whatnot, but was there sort of a bit more to it than that?
I think I was driven into leadership because I felt that it wasn't. Remember, I told you that even at my smallest club, my little community club, I just didn't like the way things are done. And even though I did not have the expertise, I felt that things could improve. So my decision very strongly was that it's time I left football. I needed to stop playing to go and help on the other side, which I found quite wanting. That was the biggest. I was very passionate. I loved playing football. Even when I took this decision, the passion stayed. And the book that I'm about to release, has a thread of passion right through it because of the things that I did. Certain things I wouldn't promote so much because if you're over passionate, it also, and you're a family person, it can affect the family. Football is your life. Nothing else matters. So but I was really motivated by what I figured was the absence of good leadership.
And I don't want to get ahead of the book, of course, but is there a single thing through your career that you are sort of most proud of, an achievement, perhaps something that really you look back and you think, this is somewhere where I really made a difference?
I think, in fact, all organizations that I've worked for, if you take the Botswana Football Association, for example, the very fact that we're able to start development in my country, we're able to educate all and sundry that independence-friendly games are not the wherewithal, and that we needed to get stuck into development, go through the pain, because when you are new in a competition, you're going to be thrashed almost all the time, and we did get that beating. Just the fact that we're able to change direction, I really feel very proud about, and not too long after we started development in 2012, for the first time, the Botswana national team Zebras went to the first, ever AFCON final. So we felt that, look, something was positive here. Earlier on, even before then, in 1995, we qualified for the first under-17 African Championships as Botswana. So clearly there were signs, okay? Sometimes not very clearly, but and also our technical director, who was the late Ben Kofi, did a lot of work even in developing coaches in the country. So the country's culture changed, and there was a much stronger appreciation now for football coaching, etc.
And if we look a little bit to the future, are there things that you still want to achieve? Where do you sort of see yourself going from here? Now, I know you're still very involved with COSAFA, etc., but what does the future look like for you?
Yes, I think sometimes I just say to myself, well, I'm happy that I've started writing a book. If it goes well, I could talk about my journey at COSAFA, my journey at FIFA. I could talk about my journey post-FIFA, and I just feel that it's through writing, and if people develop a culture of reading, perhaps there's still an opportunity for me to share my experience, which I think is quite in abundance. I don't want to go back to your day-to-day management. I would rather provide consultancy services, where it is required, such as we are doing at COSAFA, etc. So that's where I see myself, and I'm still very much in love with the game, and obviously I'd like to contribute as much as I can. We're getting on with age now, but you still want to share. I've still got that feeling that I'd like to share with anybody who wants the information. Certainly COSAFA has been benefiting from it, and the participants who attended the workshops have been very, very fulfilling, because the participants themselves saw the value. It's not like me just saying, guys, this is how you do it. They said, hey, by the way, this will work for us. They look at their situations in their member associations or their clubs and see value in bringing about the change that I'm trying to, that I'm engaging them.
Finally, is there any details you're able to share with us about the book, when it might be published, and the title, and perhaps where people will be able to access it?
Yes, indeed. The book is going to be called Protecting the Game. And I've had questions being asked, why protecting the game? And I felt, when I look back in my career at Football Association, that sometimes we did certain things, we went overboard in the interest of protecting the game. Sometimes we could stop somebody from coming in to cause football any harm, and in a sense protecting the game. So when one reads it, you see a whole catalogue of protecting game. Personally, the one that really hits home is there's a chapter in there called Abundant Family Life. I'm not proud to say it, but literally my family was abundant in the interest of football. I was just over-passionate. That's something that I'll never teach anybody to do. But because when I went to FIFA, when I worked for COSAFA, I realized that no, an 8 to 5, if you do it properly and you have people around you, it's more than enough time. But at football, I literally almost slept at offices sometimes, because I just loved the space. When I was in my office and in a football environment, I liked nothing better.
That's it for another episode of the COSAFA Show. We will be back in a fortnight. Don't forget, you can listen to more of our podcasts on our YouTube channel, Spotify, and iTunes. You can also get the latest news via our website at www.cosafa.com, and on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok.